This week in America, one of the richest countries in the world lost its perfect credit score. An airport ran on one air traffic controller. The only statue of Melania Trump vanished into thin air. And Ben & Jerry's showed up to Congress like it was Coachella. Oh, and Diddy's on trial for trafficking. Still, but you already knew that, except the trial started. Because apparently the music industry isn't full of predators, just the ones rich enough to afford NBA packages. Meanwhile, in Georgia, a woman was declared brain dead, but the state's abortion law won't let their family remove life support. So now we're living in a Christian dystopia where your body isn't even yours after it stops working. The Supreme Court is out here dusting off laws from 1798 to deport immigrants like we're reenacting Hamilton with less rhythm and more fascism. And Trump took a trip to the Middle East to do whatever he does, probably insult 3 religions before lunch, and even managed to piss off Netanyahu. That takes talent. And look, I'm not saying America's in decline, but when Fort Knox gold conspiracies are trending and the dude who made Cherry Garcia is getting arrested for protesting genocide, it might be time to ask, are we the bad guys? Welcome to the Adonis Black Show, the only news show where we laugh to keep from crying, scream to keep from quitting, and throw shade so hard it gets flagged by the FAA. Let's get into it. Alright, let's talk about the trial that's been buried under celebrity fluff pieces and corporate silence, because Diddy is in real deal legal trouble. This week, Cassie Ventura, Diddy's former girlfriend and artist, took the stand in a federal sex trafficking case against Sean Diddy Combs. And when I say she took the stand, I mean she dropped insanely graphic testimony that blew the courtroom wide open. She described the relationship marked by manipulation, coercion, and physical abuse. According to Cassie, Diddy drugged her, forced her into sex acts with other men while he watched, and threatened to kill her if she ever left. Diddy's defense team tried to paint Cassie as a girl who actually enjoyed freak-offs with him and was using him for money, extorted him, and is now being used by the feds to try to tarnish his image further to deter the jury, obviously, making it essentially a trial on his character instead of a trial on the charges actually brought against him. Meanwhile, the feds are trying to paint Diddy as an abusive, drugged-out manipulator who has more than enough kinks to last us all a few lifetimes. The prosecution backed Cassie's claims with decades of pattern behavior, including previous settlements, NDA to former partners and employees who all told similar stories of control, intimidation, and trauma. And you know the media is doing everything it can to bury this under. Kim Kardashian launches new socks because accountability doesn't trend well when it comes with a beat behind it. Did she actually make new socks? I'm not trying to promote that lady. Now look, let's talk optics for a second. This is the same Diddy who marched at protests, spoke about protecting black women, and danced on stage saying every civil rights buzzword known to man. Meanwhile, his own house was allegedly on fire. You can't hold a mic and a muzzle at the same time, my guy, but everybody seems to think they can, in the entertainment industry at least. Look, Cassie's testimony is emotional, it's raw, it's painfully detailed. And while Diddy's legal team is already swinging back hard, saying she's lying for money, fame, or revenge, the patterns are doing most of the talking. Multiple women, similar stories, NDA money, threats, trauma. Let's not talk about Kid Cudi. Look, you don't need to be a legal expert to know when a man is hiding behind his lawyers, his legacy, and a carefully curated image, especially when that image is built on elusively wielded power and a loving, charismatic mask with the ability to crush anyone who questions it. So where do we go from this point? Well, not to the cookout. I'll tell you that much. Look, P. Diddy and R. Kelly are both banned until further notice. Look, so while you were boarding your Spirit Airlines flight hoping the seat didn't detach midair, Newark Liberty International Airport, one of the busiest in the country, was out here running on one single air traffic controller during peak hours. Let me say that again. One human being directing planes in and out of one of the top 10 busiest airports in America. Like it's a video game and the stakes are just casual death. This isn't some obscure regional airstrip with tumbleweeds blowing across the runway. This is Newark, a major hub for United Airlines handling over 43 million passengers a year. And according to a federal report from the Department of Transportation, the tower was so short-staffed. There were overnight shifts where a single person was working alone for hours. That is illegal, by the way. FAA policy clearly states that at least 2 certified controllers must be present at all times for safety and backup. And the controller, look, they were doing everything: ground control, tower communications, clearance delivery. Imagine working a drive-thru, taking orders, flipping burgers, managing a register, and flying a damn plane. Look, people wonder why I don't clap when we land anymore. I'm busy texting my lawyer just in case. The FAA, bless their non-transparent hearts, said it was a temporary staffing issue, but this temporary issue was happening for weeks, if not months. Meanwhile, Pilots were reportedly circling longer, facing delays, and relying on solo controllers to coordinate landings with literal lives in the balance. The only place where one person should have that much power and pressure is the DJ booth at a black cookout. Anywhere else, it's unacceptable. Here's the deeper issue. This isn't just a Newark problem. The entire air traffic control system in the United States is facing a staffing crisis, with thousands of vacancies and veteran workers quitting under stress. You thought your 9 to 5 was toxic? Imagine being responsible for 3 Boeing 737s, 2 cargo planes, and a Delta jet with a cracked window alone, while also telling TSA agents where to order lunch. Air traffic unions have been warning about this for years, calling for better pay, mental health protections, and updated technology. Instead, they got budget cuts and more thoughts and prayers. It's like this country wants to run everything like a startup, do more with less, until less turns into nobody and the office burns down mid-Zoom call. So, what's the FAA's plan now? They've promised immediate corrective action, which is code for, we didn't think y'all would find out. Look, so many people were upset because of flight issues. They don't need a thank you for your patience. They need at least 2 people in a damn control tower. So here's a headline you don't see every day. The United States has lost its perfect credit rating. Yet Moody's dropped us like a bad first date because our national debt and interest payments are spiraling like a contestant on The Bachelor who just realized the ring is fake. For decades, the U.S. held a gold star, AAA credit rating, meaning lenders around the world saw us as the safest bet. Now, we're still reliable, but Moody's said, y'all look a little broke. Look, their official reason, rising debt, political dysfunction, and unsustainable fiscal policies. Translation, y'all maxed out 17 credit cards and y'all still trying to buy tanks. To be clear, this downgrade doesn't mean America's bankrupt. It means we've become at risk. Like, still good for it, maybe, but don't leave us alone in your house with your wallet on the table. Because we have debt, $1 trillion in debt. The downgrade follows years of growing debt, congressional standoffs over the budget, and interest payments that now top $1 trillion a year. That's just interest. Literally paying $1 trillion not to make progress. You ever get that credit card statement where you paid $500 and your balance went up anyway? That's America right now. And what are we spending that money on? Not universal health care, not housing, not education, and not infrastructure. Nope, we're spending it on weapons, foreign military aid, and tax breaks for billionaires who don't even use public roads unless they're flying over them in a helicopter made of gold. Now, Congress is acting shocked. Like they didn't just pass a defense bill that costs more than the GDP of half the countries on the planet. Republicans are blaming Biden like they do for everything. Democrats are blaming Republicans like they do for everything. And the Fed is over here trying to stop inflation by raising interest rates, as if jacking up rent makes groceries cheaper. The truth is, this is bipartisan dysfunction. Both parties voted for giant spending packages with no clear way to pay for them. And every time someone says, raise taxes on the rich, Jeff Bezos' rocket tilts 15 degrees toward Earth like it's listening. Now, what does this mean for regular people? It means higher interest rates on everything. Mortgages, car loans, student loans, basically anything you already can't afford. It means foreign investors might start diversifying away from the dollar. And it means that if another financial crisis hits, we're walking into it with our shoelaces tied together. Meanwhile, most Americans are out here living paycheck to paycheck, being told to budget harder while the federal government is pulling an afterpay plan on an F-35 fighter jet. Let's be real. This country was never run like a business. It's been run like a Ponzi scheme with a flag on it. And Moody's just sent the first warning letter. Not because they care about the people, but because the casino table started looking wobbly. And in true American fashion, our leaders will probably respond by doing absolutely nothing until the next downgrade or the next shutdown or the next $1 trillion we owe the rest of the world. And when that happens, we'll still be here laughing through it because crying got downgraded too. So the Supreme Court hit pause this week on an attempt by the Trump administration to deport immigrants in Texas under something called the Alien Enemies Act, a law so old it's basically written in quilt pen and colonizer. The Alien Enemies Act was passed in 1798, which, if you're keeping score, is the same era we were still arguing over powdered wigs and whether leeches cure everything. Now, why is a law written before electricity being used in 2025? Because the Trump team reached so deep into the racism fault, they put out a founding father vintage. The act gives the president power to deport non-citizens from quote-unquote enemy nations during wartime. Except the U.S. is not at war with any of the countries these immigrants are from, so to make it work, the Trump camp essentially has to say, trust us, these people are enemies because we said so. The Supreme Court was like, hold up, look, in a 5-4 ruling, they blocked the deportations temporarily while lower courts figure out whether invoking the Alien Enemies Act is actually constitutional. The backlash has been loud. Immigration lawyers say this sets a dangerous precedent. Constitutional scholars say this makes no legal sense. And historians are like, y'all realize this was used during Japanese internment, right? And let's not pretend this isn't politically loaded. The Trump campaign is trying to look tough on immigration to rally the base. But what they're really doing is repackaging ethnic cleansing because it's not about war. It's about who looks like an enemy and who gets to define what looks like an enemy. This ruling won't stop the administration from trying other legal workarounds. But it does send a message that even this court, which leans conservative, isn't quite ready to cosplay 1798 in full. Now, if only they could do the same for abortion rights, voting laws, gerrymandering, but let's not get greedy. This next story is not funny, but it is important because it shows what happens when politicians write laws about bodies that they don't understand. A pregnant woman in Georgia was recently declared brain dead after a medical emergency. The family, devastated and grieving, wanted to remove her from life support so she could pass with dignity. But Georgia law wouldn't let them because her body still technically held a fetus. A woman with zero brain function, legally dead, was kept alive by machines, not because there was hope for her recovery, but because the state said, well, there's still a pregnancy involved. This isn't a one-off situation. It's a nightmare scenario that reproductive rights experts have warned about for years. Since the fall of Roe v. Wade, states like Georgia have pushed laws so strict, so vague, and so performatively pro-life. They're now forcing families to keep brain-dead loved ones hooked up to machines against their wishes. Let's be clear, this is not pro-life. This is pro-political optics, pro-control, we make the rules and you suffer the cost. The woman's family said they had to watch her body deteriorate while doctors waited for a legal green light that never came. Because in the eyes of the law, a fetus outweighed her humanity. And what makes this worse, there's no guidance. There's no clear path, just a mashup of medical reality and religiously coded legislation written by people who don't even know what OBGYN stands for. Now imagine, you're that family. You've said your goodbyes. You know she's gone. And the state says, actually not yet. We still need the election points. This is the future anti-choice lawmakers wanted, where death itself doesn't get the final say, where life is treated as a political prop, not a sacred decision between families and doctors. And the worst part, there will be a lot more stories like this, because these laws weren't written to support life. They were written to control it. Georgia didn't just violate this woman's rights, they violated her death. So, Trump took a trip to the Middle East this week, and surprise, he somehow managed to make things awkward between himself and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, to be fair, these two used to be political BFFs. They praised each other on live TV, swapped weird compliments like strong leader and very stable genius, and basically ran a long-distance bromance version of right-wing diplomacy. But this week, tension, shade, silence is given exes who still follow each other but muted stories out of respect. Sources close to the trip say Trump was disappointed Netanyahu wouldn't meet with him personally. Apparently, Benjamin wasn't trying to get caught in a photo op with a man currently facing 91 criminal charges and a playlist of indictments longer than a Spotify Wrapped. And Trump, he responded with trademark maturity. I don't care if he didn't meet with me. I made Israel great again. He was nothing before me. Sir, this is a diplomatic visit, not your old rap beef. But hey, let's look at the bigger picture here. Trump is campaigning again, and he's trying to reassert dominance on the global stage, especially with evangelical voters who see any Israel alignment as divine prophecy. But Netanyahu has his own problems. Mass protests in Israel, internal political chaos, a PR nightmare over Gaza. The last thing he needs is a surprise photo with a guy whose Secret Service detail probably doubles as a bail enforcement team. And politically, it's risky. Benjamin already got heat for hugging Trump too tightly the first time. Now, it's like, thanks for the embassy, but stay over there, orange guy. Meanwhile, Trump is spinning the whole thing as proof that he's being snubbed by the establishment, which, to be fair, is kind of his brand. But here's the bottom line. This was not a diplomatic trip. It was a soft reboot of the Trump foreign policy reality show. In episode 1, no guest star, no audience applause, just ego in a private jet. And in this international breakup, one thing is clear. Netanyahu has moved on. Trump, I don't even know what this guy does or thinks, or I think he should be committed to a mental institution. At the very least, he's losing some of his faculties. In New Orleans, 10 inmates escaped from the Orleans Justice Center by going full Shawshank, crawling through a maintenance hole behind a toilet, and slipping out through a loading dock. They even used bed sheets to scale the perimeter wall, blanket ladder style.
Surveillance video at the jail captured the brazen breach. CBS's Katie Weiss is in New Orleans with the latest. It almost sounds like something out of a movie, Katie.
Surveillance footage shows them sprinting across I-10 like it's a prison-themed episode of Wipeout. The kicker, no one noticed until 8:30 a.m. Head count, 7 hours later. It's not a jailbreak. That's a shift change. Look, 7 are still on the run, including Derrick Groves, convicted of multiple murders. Authorities say the escape required inside help. 3 jail employees are already suspended in the jail, which runs at just 60% staff, has been under federal oversight for years. So to recap, a toilet tunnel, missing guards, murderers on the loose, and federal oversight that clearly meant watching things fall apart in HD. New Orleans deserves better. So does basic public safety, because the public was not notified until 24 hours later. Social media is once again obsessed with the idea that the gold in Fort Knox is gone. TikTok detectives are convinced the vault's empty. The government's lying and somehow this is all tied to lizard people. The official response, trust us, is there. Which, yeah, that's convincing, because when has trust us from the US government ever gone wrong? In the meantime, Fort Knox remains locked tighter than your cousin's crypto wallet after you forgot the password in 2021. Ben Cohen, yes, that Ben of Ben and Jerry's, got arrested this week while protesting U.S. aid to Israel at a Senate hearing. Yes, the ice cream mogul got cut for yelling truth into a room full of senators pretending not to hear it. And let me just say, it's wild that the co-founder of Cherry Garcia is doing more for Palestinian rights than half of Congress. He's been a long-time activist, but this time it was personal. He said silence is complicity, and clearly the cops agreed because they shut him up real quick.
Permitted while the committee conducts its business. Capitol Police are asked to remove the individuals from the hearing room.
Move down the hallway.
Ben, why are you getting arrested?
Move down the hallway. If you stop, you will be arrested.
Poor kids in Gaza by buying bombs and pays for it by kicking kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
Keep going down. Keep going down the hallway.
Ben, how many days have they been starving in Gaza?
What has it been? 75 days by now. Stop.
Anthony, I need my shoe.
Our program.
That way. Down in the hall right now. Let's go. Everybody. I'm saying, everybody. Stop business. Pick it up. Stop business. Pick it up.
Ben, what are you calling for the Congress and senators to do for Gaza?
Congress and the senators need to ease the siege. They need to let food into Gaza. They need to let food into starving kids.
What did you say in there, man?
I said that Congress is paying to bomb poor kids in Gaza and paying for it by kicking poor kids off Medicaid in the U.S.
Don't let them any closer.
Israel's an issue that, truthfully, I'm afraid to tackle in any super detailed way, because we kind of live in a police state at this point, which seems in part controlled by Israel, part controlled by Russia, and would just outright arrest U.S. citizens for no reason. But leaving civilians, and most notably children, to starve by blocking food from going into Gaza is actually just evil. That act is evil. I don't think we can really debate that, and that is where I shut up. So let's review. The government lost its gold star. The airports are held together with prayers and expired labor contracts. Your favorite rapper might be a sex trafficker. He probably is. And 7 convicted criminals just walked out of jail using a toilet and a blanket like it was a level in Grand Theft Auto. Look, this ain't a country no more. This is a group project with no group chat. But don't worry, Congress is busy staging cosplay hearings. Billionaires are getting arrested for caring. And the Supreme Court is out here deciding which century to reenact next. We're not just watching the collapse, we're being told that the collapse is working for us. Told to trust systems that clearly don't. Told to vote harder while they gerrymander the map with a Sharpie and a God complex. But here's the thing. We are not powerless. We're just gaslit quite a bit. And we're exhausted because of that. And we're dangerously close to normalizing the absurd. So don't let them wear you down with chaos and fatigue. Stay loud, stay smart, and remember, if they're comfortable, then we're doing something wrong. This has been the Adonis Black Show, where we don't just read the news, we roast it until the truth shows up. Only show where we laugh to keep from crying. I will see you next week.